I'll watch for Chrissy. So I'll go ahead and get started. Um, Thank you everybody for coming in. This is my weekly, I guess you could say, weekly show on Twitter Spaces called A Good Faith Space, where we have a nice, good faith discussion about whatever topic that we're going to discuss. So obviously, you've seen the title. We're going to be talking about love in modern times, and I wanted to invite a few people that I talk to regularly or semi-regularly, and get their viewpoint and kind of go down this wormhole talking about love and relationships and things of that nature. So um, before I go any further, I'll let everybody introduce themselves. So we'll go with Rocky. Rocky, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Rocky. I'm in the great free state of South Florida. I'm alive, so that means that we're not all dead yet. I am 40 years old. I am currently single. I'm divorced and not actively dating.
Okay. Peter, you want to go ahead?
Sure. My name is Peter Feliciano. Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm a singer, a songwriter, and a podcaster from Manhattan. I host a podcast called Conservatish, and I am currently single as well, and not really actively dating. So it's complicated. Thanks.
All right, cool. And Chrissy, you want to introduce yourself?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Woo! Okay. I was trying to get on from my laptop, but I'm retarded, so I'm on my phone. My name is Chrissie Mayr. I'm a stand-up comic and podcaster from New York. And yeah, are we stating our marital status or like if we're single or not?
Sure, if you want to treat this like a game show, might
Oh,
as
all
well.
right. Okay. This is funny. It's like it's AA or something. Yeah, I've been in a relationship for 7 years now.
Oh,
Woo!
wow.
My longest one.
Excellent, excellent. All right, thank you guys for introducing yourselves. For people who are not familiar with me, my name is Adam Coleman. I'm an author. I write for Spoon TV on a weekly basis, and I am the founder of Bronx Street Publishing. So I'm doing a bunch of different things. Um, oh, is that Chrissy? Yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm doing a bunch of different things, and I'm obviously hosting this Twitter space, which I'm trying to do on a weekly basis. So, um, and if we're saying our status, I am recently married. I got married in September. Um, so that's my status. So, but let's get into the topic. So, love. Um, Part of the reason I wanted to have this discussion is because I watch a lot of online content discussing relationships, um, how men and women see each other. And I feel like relationships today have kind of turned into a what can I get from this kind of situation. Um, it's a almost in a very selfish manner of looking at relationships, where you're measuring up the person to find out what can you get from them. And in some ways, yes, you kind of have to do that, but it's almost kind of turned into very materialistic, and it just uh, dwindles down the individual, or it dwindles down the opposite sex, as to what you're looking for. Um, so I wanted to just talk about love. Is love important anymore? Is love something that people actually seek after, or are they looking for um, what they can personally benefit, and if it no longer benefits them, then they can move on. So, Christy, Christy, you want to go first?
Yeah. I think anyone who's in a relationship or trying to be in a relationship, it's a very commendable thing to do because I think it's beyond hard, and I think the powers that be want us to be apart from one another, lonely, just living to consume, just, you know what I mean, like working all the time, buying shit, and being by ourselves. Like I just and I'm someone who did yeah, my parents were, they stayed married, but they probably should have gotten a divorce at some point. And I just grew up hearing them kind of constantly cut each other down. They were not building each other up in the, you know, the man woman ways that now I've learned as an adult are so crucial. And they just, I looked at them and I was like, man, the last thing I ever want to do is get married, because look at how much these two people resent each other so much. Yeah, and they're boomers, and it's like every generation has their challenges, but just no communication skills between my parents. They would be constantly like, I mean, it's part of why I kind of grew my sense of humor, I guess, was we were all so sarcastic around the house. Everyone's just making jokes about each other instead of telling each other how we really feel. Great for comedy, not good for trying to have a relationship like with a man. So, and now that I've been in one for 7 years, I know that it's best to like ignore everything that's coming at you. You know, if you're just, I think if I was like a typical chick, just like, you know, working a regular job, spending all my time watching TV and like on Instagram, the marketing or whatever, the messages that like women in their 20s and 30s are constantly being bombarded with is don't settle, you do you. It's like this very selfish, like shitty I noticed the messages that we're getting. I even saw this like this ad on Twitter for Legos, and they were gearing Legos towards like women in their 20s and 30s, like, you know, oh, just, and I'm like, what the fuck is this world coming to? Like, no grown woman should be sitting down opening up a box of Legos. Like, I think they're just trying to glamorize this like culture of being alone, and like, not that there's anything wrong with like you know, having you time, but they're really trying to push this like don't settle, be alone thing, and it can lead women to a very unhappy place, because I'm somebody who was tricked into feminism like throughout and right after college. You know, I was like sort of taught to hate men, and it took me years to kind of unlearn that stuff. But I think the sooner you can like turn off all of these outside sources and all these outside advice sources, the better. Because now, after being in a relationship for 7 years, it's like you, and any married person knows this, it's like you have to, love is like a practice. You like decide to love somebody. It's like, because you can fall in and out of love. Like we all know the hormones that like that you feel when you fall in love start to wane off after a year and a half, like 18 months or so. So it's like you have to make a decision to love this person as a practice to make it work. And it has kind of made me come back around on marriage again.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good point about the hormones aspect, because love changes. Actually, we're getting a little bit of feedback. If you want to mute Chrissy.
Oh yeah.
That's all right. You know, love changes throughout a relationship. So, you know, in the beginning, you always get these butterflies that last for a period of time. And I think sometimes what happens is people go in and out of relationships chasing that high. You know, it's like the first time you take drugs, the first time, or at least that's what they say. First time you do a heavy drug, you know, that's the best one. And the drug addicts are always chasing the best one. And the drug addicts are always chasing that first high. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to love. When you meet someone new, it's always the best when it's new, but that feeling goes away and it changes. So, you know, I'm married and I have a different feeling when it comes to my now wife than I did in the beginning of our relationship. And it's not a bad thing. You know, it's just a different feeling. It's more of a ownership and a level of responsibility. And so I show my way of loving her by either helping by providing, or being there for her when she, you know, is insecure about something, let's just say, for example, or just a multitude of other ways that maybe I wouldn't have necessarily done in the very beginning. It's very different. So it's interesting that you brought up that hormone aspect. Peter, what do you want to add to this?
I think what Chrissy was talking about was, and what both of you were talking about was pretty succinct and clear. I in thinking about the young man's perspective, at least women get messaging. That's so like on the View, on the View as an example, it may be an insane talk, it may be insane communication, it may be devoid of value and truth, but at least there's conversation happening. For men, the messaging, whatever that we get, is all subconscious, is all subliminal, and it's usually geared to that same thing that Chrissy's talking about, the Legos and the Harry Potter, people in their 20s reading comic books. I'm sorry, not really sorry, but if there's anyone who fucking reads comic books here. But like, I think as far as the relationship to love, everybody needs it. On a base level, we all need that intimacy. We all need that closeness. We all need to be, I'm sorry to get woo woo, but we all need to be seen. We all need to be heard. We all need to be valued. And that's an intrinsic, natural experience that all humans have. The problem is we get confused, whether it be on purpose or by accident. We all get confused on how to meet those needs. And as far as for men and women, I think it's built on the lack of fulfillment that we have is based on dishonesty. So as an example, like Chrissy was talking about getting confused or brought in by feminism, there's this move to feminine first wave. If you listen to Camille Paglia, who I love, shout out to Camille Paglia, she talks about the first wave, meaning first wave of feminism was we want equality, we want equality of opportunity. Now we're into what, a third or fourth wave, and it's about there's no gender and there's 58,000 genders, and every woman. I was just turning on Amazon Prime earlier, and every show is like, look at these women who are acting like men. Can you give us money now? Like, it's insane. It's not. It's built on this idea that we want to keep the door so wide open so no man ever hurts us, that we don't act like ourselves, that we don't keep ourselves open to meeting what we actually want, which is a masculine motherfucker, which is masculinity to fit my femininity. And I've found that for dudes, the messaging is you have to hide your actual masculinity. You have to tuck it in, if you will, and you have to make believe that you're a congenial, nice, overly accepting, wimpy motherfucker in order for women to keep the door open to you. She wears the pants, she does the thing. Where do you want to go on a first date? But I find if you get men and women alone, and off of social media and off of the bullshit, and if you ask them what they really want, it's hard to get it out, but if you ask them what they really want, men want to be men, and women want men to be men, and women want to be women, and men want women to be women. So I think it's our lack of fulfillment, whether it be in sex and love and whatever, is all based on dishonesty of trying to fit our needs. Thanks.
Yeah, it's a really good point that Peter brings up, because there are women, we've all read studies like, women who make more than their spouse or boyfriend like are secretly resentful. And then it's like, okay, if that is the case for you, no one has a perfect relationship or an ideal scenario. So it's like, let's say you do make more. Okay, well, what are some things that like my guy can do like to make me feel like a woman? If maybe that thing is cooking, maybe that thing is changing the oil, maybe that thing is like hanging up shelves or whatever. I just think that we need to get rid of this like don't settle culture. And I think for men, like the messaging I have seen is like, yeah, just crush puss, like make a lot of money, if you're like in the top 20%, earner. Like we've all heard, like I don't know if there's this guy, he has a book series called like The Rational Male, and then there's I think Rollo Tomasi is his name.
Rollo Tomasi, yeah.
And then there's also this other guy, I'm blanking on his name too, but like this, he's very funny. It's like this black guy, and he gives advice to women. I think his name is
Kevin Samuels.
Kevin, yeah, thank you. You guys are on point. And they're very quick to be like, there's like the old school trappings of masculinity there. Like women begin to lose their value after 30. they like to tell women, like, don't pursue a CEO position, just learn how to cook and focus on being hot. Well, it's like, okay. And so there's a lot of confusion going on. And not every guy is a super masculine guy. Not every woman is like uber feminine or whatever that means. It's like, I think the best thing we all can do, and it's something I still struggle with, is like really think every day, like, what do I want, and trying to best communicate that to either the person you're in a relationship with or the person that you are trying to meet, and thinking about, like, what are my values, and then where do I find somebody who also has these values. Because when I was, I say growing up, but like in my 20s and dating, like I was working at this hedge fund, and all the girls, we're all in our 20s, and we're like, hey, are we going to the husband store today after work? And it would just be like a steakhouse near one of the investment banks, and that's how they would, it's just such odd. And I never went for that, because I just was like, ugh, I don't know, who knows? Maybe if I had, I'd be with like a rich dude right now, but that never really worked for me. I was all about like pursuing this comedy dream. So for me, my perfect match was somebody that was going to be like, yes, I believe in you. I see your potential. Like, I might be making more money than him right now, but he's helped me build this business that I am, I guess, carving out for myself in comedy. So it's communication is just so key, and it's something you have to always work on, and not letting yourself get to a point where you're like harboring resentments and thinking, oh, I should have this, my life should look like this.
No, I understand you. I understand you.
Yeah.
I want to get Rocky in here. Rocky, what do you have to add?
Yeah, I think it's a perfect time for me to jump in because resentment is something I'm currently dealing with. I think that I feel like I've lost time, and I see, even today I saw somebody post, it's never too late. It's, don't wait to do this, don't wait to do that. But it's like, being told that my whole, um, like young adult life. And it was like, now I'm 40, and, the having kids part, at least biologically, may have, that ship may have sailed. And that's kind of sad. I have a lot of resentment for, what Chrissy said about putting things into practice in your relationship. But I also think it's, what we want or what we think we want, we're definitely not going to get unless we put things into practice that are going to reach that goal. And I think for, it's easy to make goals when you're young, goals for a career, goals for your finances. And I think that in relationships a lot it's based on what Peter said, the messaging that surrounds us. I think that I grew up, obviously with a two-parent household. I had a lot of siblings. So I was kind of like, that was the goal, to have, two and a half kids and a dog and a white picket fence. But throughout my college life, and I can't say I was raised necessarily religious, but it was definitely a small part of our life. But as uh, my late teens, early 20s, I did become a Christian, which now that I look back, it's kind of absurd, the amount of messaging. Like Peter said, guys don't get a lot of messaging, but girls definitely do, especially in that realm. So the messaging was, you get married and you get the ring and the proposal. And at that time, back in, the late 90s, it was, the photography business was blowing up, and weddings were becoming different. And, everyone did announcements and engagement parties, and, you flashed your ring on social media. And so I feel like all that messaging was kind of in my head, along with the messaging from the friends that I surrounded myself with. I mean, twice a week, I'd be around Christian friends who were getting into relationships, who were settling down and like having goals for that. But then I also, I was in education at the time, but all of my friends that I socialized with were like Ivy League kids. They came from money. They were chasing, their careers. And so they had goals of making money and happy hours and where's the next girls trip. And so I straddled a lot of different fences. And I mean, I do regret it. I did experience a lot. Life taught me a lot for sure. But now that I look back, I wish that I would have kind of immersed myself in, um, with people who were putting into practice things that would have gotten me closer to my goal, which was, marriage and kids. Not that I didn't get married. I was with my ex-spouse for 12 years. We were married for 3. But um, a lot of that influence that was in my ear, I severed a lot of relationships with friends because it was, well, he's controlling, or, you can't cancel this trip. Like, he's got to let you go, and things like that. So I kind of try to make everyone happy besides myself. And so I lived the single life with my girlfriends. It's funny, I think it was the New Yorker magazine. It always has the girl sitting at her desk at home, and she's got a bunch of cats and junk food laying around with a glass of wine. And then it's like the mom, like with her kids, taking them to soccer. And it's like, I wanted the right side, but I chose the left side. And so now it's like, I kind of have regret for that. Um, but I do, every time I'm asked to talk about relationships or love, I always say that women are sold a lie. And I think that feminism opened a big can of worms in saying, like, all my ex friends used to say, I'm woman, hear me roar. I can take care of myself. I don't need a guy, blah, blah, blah. And then they wind up alone and wonder why. That's been my experience. I do think there's a lot of messaging for women. I think the messaging for guys is, like Chrissy said, get money, get hoes. And, once guys actually decide to settle down, they have their pick. Um, Dating post divorce was a cluster because, with, like you said, Adam, it's kind of almost too convenient. I feel like everything's at your fingertips. So you do have, I mean, all men and women have their pick. Um, but everyone doesn't really respect each other. When I first started dating, I took everything personal, and it was really disastrous. Even guys that weren't my caliber, whether it was, financially or socially or, physically, I would get so hurt over every little rejection. And then when I started to realize the game, which wasn't how I wanted to play the game, but I became the person who I used to say, like, oh, I'm on your bench, like, swipe, 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 swipe. And I have all these people in queue. And then when I had my own bench, and it was, swipe the hottest guy first. And then when all those are gone, then you go for what's left over. And it's usually what you see as like the non-attractive guys who don't really have social media. They don't, take photos of themselves or group pictures with a fish or like a fast car that's not really theirs. Um, Once you see through all the bullshit, I think that you realize that it's the guy that you meet at a cooking class, or, the girl you meet at your yoga class who's like, I have a really great cousin or uncle. Um, and so I think it's made it super convenient to date, but it's not really effective unless you're really just looking for hookup culture.
Yeah, hookup culture is definitely. I think it's counterproductive to what a lot of people ultimately want. Um, just to go back on something you said about being in between female friends who were in relationships or building up relationships, and then single friends. And there's kind of a saying where they say single women keep women single. You know, single women want to be around other women, and they are constantly kind of giving you like negative encouragement to go back in their direction of being single as well. Because to be honest with you, I think the women who are chronically single generally aren't happy people. I'm just being, from my observation. They may do stuff, right? They may distract themselves, but when those distractions run out, they're kind of lonely people, and they're not really happy. Which is why, they say misery loves company. They want you to be along with them. They don't want to. They don't want to be miserable by themselves. Um, it's something I think a lot of women should really consider. If they want to have a successful long-term relationship, you got to minimize the amount of single women that you're surrounding yourself with, because if they're not on the same trajectory as you are, then likely they're trying to bring you down. Um, or if they're not trying to do it purposefully, just by their influence and their actions and their encouragement to be just like them will help to bring you down. Um, In regards to the, oh, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I completely agree. But I also, from something that Chrissy said, I do think my married friends also played a part in, like, it's kind of why I stayed in purgatory, like right in between, because I convinced myself, I went to all the birthday parties and the baby showers and I was the fun aunt and I was super generous because I had money to blow and I became everybody's like favorite person. Like I went on girls' trips and traveled the world and then I had all the fun with my friends that I got to be their babysitter so they could have nights out. But also, my married friends with kids painted a horrible picture of, like you get to take naps and you get to spend your money where you want to. And so I think it really came from both sides. I
Mm.
think that it kind of pushed me somewhere in the middle where I had to say, like, how do I want it? Life's hard, choose your hard sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know what? I personally hate that. I hate because you know what ends up happening? You're the single person, right? So you become the venting person um, from their, let's say, whatever struggle they're going through that day. Life's a struggle no matter what, status you are. Um, so they're going to vent to you their married life issues or their parental issues. That, oh, I'm tired, I've been chasing this kid around all day. At least you get to, it's like a little bit of jealousy and they're kind of putting that on you. And at the same time, they're installing fear, right? In that particular situation or going in that direction. And actually, that was something that I was going to switch over to. I think the number one issue that we see, or I don't know, say number one, but one of the top issues that I see from both men and women, I would say a little bit more with women than men, but it's fear. Um, Men and women have different fears when it comes to relationships. Women generally fear being hurt emotionally. If the guy cheats or the guy decides to leave or something like that, they're fearful of being vulnerable with someone, and then all of a sudden something changes and they get hurt emotionally. For men, they're fearful of women leaving, but they're also fearful of divorce um, because divorce is kind of tainted in the woman's direction. And for men, men value uh, generally speaking, men value what they earn, what they were able to accomplish, right? Men are doers, generally speaking. So if we are able to build a family and purchase a house and cars and everything, and then he's doing that for both of you, but then you didn't earn that per se, and then you get to leave with half or more of it. For guys, that's something to fear, especially like alimony and things like that. So I think there's fear on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. There's fear on both sides. Like, and Rocky, I felt so much of what you were saying about the resentment piece because I just turned 38, and I was like, damn, when my mom was my age, like she had 3 kids already, and she was like well on her way. And then I'm like, oh, but she didn't even have a job, and my dad was a landscaper. Like, how were they able to cobble together a family? And I don't know. I feel like boomers like ideally had it so freaking easy. Like it all just like they were kind of broke, but it all kind of worked out for them. But like I do get resentful because my first few boyfriends in my 20s like all cheated on me. So it's like I have this example of my parents not getting along, and then I look at all my boyfriend experiences will taught me kind of like at the end of the day they're all going to cheat on you, so you need to kind of arm yourself, like put armor on, emotional armor, because when this person eventually cheats on you, like you need to be able to move on and be okay with it. And it kind of sent me this messaging of like, don't really put real roots down. And then I did like several summers of like just hooking up as much as possible, almost like a dude would, like conquering them, like Google Maps, not Google Maps, well, probably Google Maps, but like Google calendaring in hookups, like feeling like, wow, I'm not gonna get attached. And then you have the highs, and then like you have such a low, right? Because you've like then it's done and you have to do another one. And I was like, I definitely got to a place where I could have been a sex addict had I kept going down that path. But the point is like, you have a few people cheat on you, and then you're like, oh shit, I guess this is going to be my life now. And then, you know, a lot of our messaging is, yeah, you will undoubtedly be left for somebody younger and hotter. And then I met my boyfriend and he has a kid. And I was like, okay, well, now if I want to have a family, I need to make sure that I make enough to cover, quote, my kid. You know what I mean? Like I got in my head, like, you know, I have to be prepared, like, for a guy leaving. Like that was the result of my messaging. Like if I want to have a kid, I need to be able to figure out how to do it on my own, because I was just kind of like the result of all my programming, you know? And so now I've been with my current boyfriend 7 years. We haven't had a kid together yet because I've been stuck in this, like, well, you better earn enough money first before, because, you know, you get, it's like that movie, what is it? Idiocracy, where like the smart couples don't have kids, but then like the morons just like they keep having babies. So
Right.
there's so much going on. And like, yeah, and it's like you said, Adam, like men are so afraid. Look at all the like the Real Housewives shows and the Kardashians. Men are so afraid of being taken for a ride and a woman taking all their shit. So then their guard is up in that way. And I think all this shit just steals a lot of our time, you know, and makes us scared.
But I think I want to add to this conversation of fear from men's point of view, because it seems like, and I don't think it's intentional, but it seems like we've been painting this idea of the of what men's fears are after we've already been in a relationship or in a dating situation. And I think the majority of men's rejection that we face is on the front end, and the majority of women's rejection that they face is on the back end. Meaning we have to, and it's regardless of feminism, you could be rah-rah feminism. When was the last time you asked a dude out? Okay, shut the fuck up. So we're talking about two different games that we're playing. But when it comes to men's fear, all we've talked about so far is please don't take half of my shit. And from my experience, the majority of men do not have that experience. The majority of men, I would say, once we're in that relationship, yeah, that's part of it. That's definitely a huge part of it. But on the front end, most women do not have the visceral experience of rejection on a daily basis, unless maybe they're an actress who's going out to, you know, a visceral reaction, a visceral experience of what that rejection looks like. And we talk, again, with the communication. I remember there was a Facebook group back in probably 2009, 2010. There was a Facebook group, and I don't know how many people it had in it, but again, this is a public group. And the group was called, I Don't Have Stretch Marks, I'm a Tiger Who's Earned Her Stripes. You would never see a Facebook group called, It's Not the Size of the Ship, It's the Motion of the Ocean. Okay? So we are built to talk about, to listen to explore the feelings and the fears and the wins and the losses of what women's experiences are. And I don't blame women for not knowing what's going on with us, or honestly, for being even interested in it, because we've made that experience. We've kept our fucking mouths shut. We've had part of the, you know, before, I'm not saying men should cry all the time or any of that crap. I'm saying underneath the fear, let's talk about infidelity as an example. I cheated. It was a couple relationships ago. I cheated a couple of times. And my experience cheating wasn't necessarily because I was afraid or whatever. A part of it was I was just, you know, wanted to get a little, you know, whatever, right? But the insecurity factor was that I did not want to open myself up to the woman I was with to tell her what I actually wanted, which at that point for me was to move on to a different relationship and stop seeing her. Right. And I was scared of looking at that of myself. So infidelity, again, we can look at the symptom all we want, but the actual disease is insecurity. The actual disease is fear. And if we don't address the actual disease, if we don't at least talk about what's going on underneath, I need to screw a lot of girls because well, what's underneath that? I'm not a man unless I screw a lot of girls. Well, how do we help men feel more like men? I'll tell you first things first, it does not come from girls. It does not come from girls. I don't want to hear anybody on The View talk about what men need to do. Sorry, no. It's us. It's us talking to us. You guys have had the experience, thank God, of talking about your fears and talking about love and talking about dating and blah, blah, blah. Men have to fix men, and that's the only way that that'll happen. But again, I just want to point to the rejection, the loss, the fear, the whatever that we face is not just don't take half my stuff, although that's a valuable whatever, not being taken advantage of, etc. But it's all the way on the front end, and we don't even get a chance to look at it ourselves, much less have society or culture understand what we go through on that. Thanks.
No, that's a good point, Peter. Rocky, I'm going to have you go in just a second, but I wanted to add in, Peter's right. You have to first get into a relationship for that to even become a fear. I will say, though, that there are guys who may have had failed relationships who don't want to enter into a potential future relationship because of the fear of what's the long game. Men usually look at the long game of whatever situations they're getting into, and so there are some men who are like looking around and saying the divorce rate is 50%. Why would I ever blah 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 blah? But I will say, Peter is right. There are a vast majority of men who have trouble just finding a sexual partner, and that kind of brings me into one thing that I don't think a lot of women understand, or they assume that it's something different. For men, having sex with women is difficult. Finding a woman who actually wants to have sex with you is relatively difficult. You could be rich, famous, wealthy, whatever. It is still something that you have to put effort into for it to happen, right? It is the opposite for women. And I think what happens is, for women's sexual experience and wanting to have sex, if they want to, the vast majority of them have a guy who's sitting on deck who they can hit up and they can have sex. It's very simple for them. And I think that their exposure with men that they would have sex with, they think that that guy is basically every guy. And the vast majority of guys struggle, right? Men, for example, are going later and later before they lose virginity. I think it's not abnormal to find a guy in his early 20s who hasn't lost his virginity. And that is something that is kind of unusual from even when I grew up. I lost my virginity at 19, and I thought I was fucking late as hell. You know, it felt like all my friends had lost their virginity at 16, 17. So it is something that it's becoming more and more difficult. The young men today are more and more socially awkward because they're obsessed with online. They're obsessed with the internet and their cell phones, and they don't know how to interact with women. But the guys who do, the guys who are able to understand women, those are the guys who are having sex with women. I believe the stat was like 90% of women have children, right? But obviously 90% of men are not having children, right? So there are men, like for example, if my wife and I are able to have a child, I will be one of those men who's able to have children with multiple women, right? And that is not the situation for the majority of men, right? So the opportunity and the ability to have sex with women is very difficult. And this leads me into one more thing before I go to Rocky. Part of the reason I think that there are failed relationships for some guys, the guys that you might call beta guys, they're kind of pushovers and so on and so forth. The reason being is because they may be in a relationship with a woman and they're happy that they're having regular sex with her, right? They get along with her. From the outside, you're like, oh man, there's problems here. She has some red flags. And then the next thing you know, he's marrying her, right? Because they've been together for a long enough time. He doesn't want to string her along, and he's happy to have sex with her on a routine basis. And he knows what it's like to be single and try to find someone to have sex with. So they stay in these piss poor relationships, and then they wonder why they get divorced, why their woman leaves them. And it's because that they're not the type of guy that these women should have been with in the first place. And so it's not a healthy situation. These guys have kind of a scarcity mindset instead of an abundance mindset. So they're fearful of moving on and finding someone who's a better match for themselves. And likewise for the woman, find somebody else who be a better match. That guy's not for her. So I think there's a bunch of different things there at play. I know I'm bringing up here, but Rocky, what do you have to say?
Yeah, so two things I wanted to add, companionship and compatibility. I think that definitely one of the things lacking in my, I guess my only, I would say, halfway functional relationship was it lacked companionship. You know, I always, one of my biggest like goals, I guess, and it's so silly, is like the Saturday Costco runs or Sunday meal prepping or, you know, going to a family event and not having to feel that pressure like they're just here because they have to be. And so a lot of my friends have that. They've kind of modeled that for me. But if you're just not with somebody that you're compatible with, then those things are never going to happen. Um, so I feel like when um, you know, things weren't horrible, but they were like lukewarm. So it was almost like when I got divorced, the floodgates open. And I mean, you say that guys don't have a, you know, guys have a hard time having sex. They, like Chrissy said, lived like a dude for 2 years. I convinced myself that I could, you know, I have to say, honestly, as a woman, um, especially in the last 20 years, at least in my experience of, you know, my adult life, women have been empowered to be hypersexual. And so I don't know who these dudes are that aren't having sex, but they weren't the ones I was talking to. I feel like when I went on dating apps, it was, I mean, at 38 years old, like Chrissy said, the floodgates open for, you know, the 26 to 35-year-olds that were just pounding down my door because they literally think that older women are more experienced and they have less drama just because they have more life experience. They're not going to be that nagging, insecure 24-year-old, which I definitely was at 24. And so, yeah, I had what I called was a lot of fun for 2 years, but it was, like Chrissy said, always that regret. Like, you know, girls use sex to get love and guys use love to get sex. And we're always on the bad end of things because it never works out that way. I could, you know, I was with guys who probably were not even up to my caliber if you just put everything on paper side by side. And they ran all over me. You know, I spent a lot of money. I don't think I've ever had a guy pay for a meal or a trip or a hotel to go see them or visit them. I mean, and I want to say my parents raised me right, but like I said, I had that influence of, you know, well, I'm an independent woman and I'm going to pay because then I have control. And then I look back and I'm like, what standard did I have, you know? So I think the dating thing is it definitely different than it used to be. Um, I think a lot of women are calling themselves empowered, but they're really just slaves to the game. And whatever the guys finding them are definitely benefiting from it. But I do see a lot of my guy friends now, especially because I'm single and, you know, I try to surround myself with a diverse group just because we're all kind of walking the same thing. But I did actually talk to one guy, funny enough that you say it, but he was 42, divorced, and he never wanted to remarry. He had 2 kids. He had a horrible relationship with his ex-wife. He feels like he gave her everything, and just the sheer um shame of like not being able to make it work. And he was the provider and he was the protector and they did the family trips. And he didn't want to fail again. So I definitely think there's guys out there like Peter was talking about. um I think there's guys out there that are scared of failure, and once it happens the first time, um it's very hard for them to let it happen again.
Yeah,
Right.
I agree with you, Rocky. I agree with what you're saying as far as a lot of that goes. But I will just throw this idea out there. I live like a guy for 2 years or a year or whatever you were talking about. I think maybe adjust that a little bit. I live like a hot guy. I live like a confident guy for a year or 2 years. Here's a good example. If you want to know what men go through, and we both should listen to and talk to and communicate with each other and understand that there are pitfalls and benefits to both sides. I get that. But if you want to know the male experience, and to know what Adam and I are talking about, because it's not a minority of men. It's okay. It's the minority, and it's a growing number, just like Adam was talking about, of men who don't know how to talk to women, or who lack the confidence, or who are beta and just say, "Well, gee golly, I'm just happy to get sex." I get that. Almost every dude has been that guy, whether it was at 17 or after he got out of a relationship and when he was 40, whatever. But if you want to know the experience, start a Tinder with a male profile and try. See how many messages you have to put. See how many hooks you have to put in the water to get one bite. See how many bites you need to get before you pick up a fish. Okay? So the experience is different. And my friend Mike Harlow from the Walkaway campaign, we had a show called Lovecast, and he was talking about how the Red Flag Lovecast. He'll want me to fucking plug it. And he was talking about how for gay men there's a lot of opportunity, and how there is drawbacks to that. And I get that. There's a cheapness. There's a et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But if you put it on a scale and said, okay, here's how much you would have to work, even if you're hot, even if you're maybe not rich, famous, blah, 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 but unless you're bringing something so undoubtable, perfectly whatever to the table, here's how much work you have to put in order to get off. Most women, most gay men would go, okay, I'd rather take the lottery when it comes to finding love, rather than the lottery when it comes to finding sex, I think.
I hear that, Peter. I've actually had a lot of friends, not myself, that have created profiles to kind of see what, in it from a guy's perspective, like what's out there, what do these girls' profiles look like? I mean, unfortunately, now they probably have their vaccination status, which is, I think that weeds out a lot of people for a lot of population. But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying.
Chrissy, you want to add anything?
Part of me wishes, like, I met my boyfriend, like, just, I think, as Tinder was, like, getting really popular. And it's just so funny, like, my whole life is on social media, like, all my comedy stuff, yet, like, all of my serious boyfriends I met in person. So I would just say to anybody who is, like, frustrated with, like, the dating scene, is like, you have to do everything. Like, you have to be online. You have to maybe ask friends of friends. You have to maybe get a matchmaker. You have to talk to the person behind you at the deli. You have to go to comedy shows, go to like the gun range. Like, you have to like really diversify where you're going, because you're gonna get frustrated. Like, damn, and you're gonna feel really bad about yourself if all you're doing is swiping all day. And I think, like Peter mentioned, somebody mentioned earlier, like the messaging to men is just like, work on yourselves. Like, that's true for women too. It's just like, and that's the biggest challenge, is like not getting cynical and not getting hard, and like hardening like your heart. You don't want your heart to get hard and you to be like, get crusty. You know what I mean? Like, we all take like different forms of rejection, and just doing enough of what makes you happy in the meantime. And it's so true what you said about like distancing yourself from a lot of single women, because like women were all socialized together, like more so. Like in high school, you have your group of girls, and then college, you have your group of girls, and men are kind of like, maybe because you are more socialized to like be providers and figure your shit out, kind of like a little bit more to be independent. But yeah, I can't, I remember a lot of girlfriends, like when I first started dating my current boyfriend, like they were like, oh, this is a rebound. You need to spend more time being single. I heard it from a lot of my girlfriends, like, you need to spend more time being single. And I feel like I have been 3 or 4 women with my current boyfriend. Like, I feel like I have changed so freaking much. And we've been dating like 7 years now. And then like, some days I really want to get married. And then some days you have this feeling of like, is there somebody better out there? Like, it fucks with you. And now sometimes I feel like, even if he were to propose, like, oh, fuck, why didn't you do this in year 2 or year 3? Like, part of me is a little bit like, there is a sweet spot to getting engaged and married, I think. And if you miss that, then like, people start to get resentful. And I guess by people, I mean me. But it's so weird. It's all, I don't know. I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah, I actually, when the pandemic started, I remember it was, last March or March 2020. And I was talking to this guy that he was, I don't know, I called him a meatball. He kind of wasn't really my type, but he had a house on the beach in the Bahamas. He had a helicopter, he had the cars, and he was just a genuinely nice guy with money, which was like, like I was like, throw it in the bag. And I remember when the pandemic started, I was just like, no, like, have to be safe, blah, blah, blah. And I told my friends, I'm like, great, like, here's my chance, settle down again. And like, now I have to wait another year. I'm 39 years old. This is bullshit. And then I remember things just didn't work out. But I remember thinking, this is horrible. Like, I have to put my life on hold for God knows how long. I can't date. But it was almost like I had an epiphany and I was like, this is perfect. Like, I have to FaceTime a guy before I go on a date. I have to, communicate and actually have meaningful conversations. And I almost feel like it was like God's little fence he put around my heart that was like, okay, girl, you got to heal, you got to calm down. And it almost like raised the bar of my expectations. I could no longer lead with the physical foot, which clearly did not get me anywhere. So I feel like even though I'm single at 40, I'm in a pretty good place. I've grown a lot. Um, but you're right. Everyone says work on yourself, but then you're like, as a female, you turn around and you're 40 and you're like, well, shit, I'm really tired of working on myself. Like, maybe I should have done something different. Maybe I have to do more. So, but I definitely think putting yourself out there, like, if there's a cooking class, I'm signing up for it. If there's somewhere where like douchebags do not apply, I'm going there. And that's my field now. I don't ever anticipate downloading another dating app because I think they're horseshit, but here we are.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally suggest using dating apps. I know there are people out there that it's luck of the draw. It's worked. They say a dead clock is right twice a day. Um, I would I would advise meeting a person or um, friend through a friend or whatever. Exhaust all options of people in person. Um, this way, you can kind of weed out the people who aren't necessarily serious. Um, Before I say anything else, I wanted to say in a little bit, we will go to anybody who wants to speak, who wants to add to the conversation. So you can just request to speak, and we'll take you one at a time. Um, and remember, this is an open floor. We won't cut you off. You may agree with some things or disagree. It's perfectly fine. We're not in a bubble here. So one last thing I kind of wanted to add. Um, you know, I think for young men, I'm speaking because I'm a guy, and Peter's right. We've all had these different moments in a guy's life where uh, they like to say like blue pill, where you're kind of the modern man, where you are catering a little bit too much to women. You're a little bit of a pushover. You're the nice guy. And I spent many years being that particular person. Um, and it wasn't until I was realizing and having conversations with other female friends that my approach of being the nice guy wasn't working. And I had to figure out why it wasn't working. And I really had to examine myself to make it to that point. So, fast forward to about 2 years ago, I meet my now wife, and she's wondering, why am I single? And I have to tell her, you don't understand. I had to go through a bunch of adversity. I had to go through bad relationships. I had to really examine myself. I had to really work on myself to figure out how to be that better person, learn the lessons from the failures of my previous relationships to become the person that I am today. Um, and I think that there aren't enough people who look at the common denominator when it comes to their failed relationships, and it's them. I think that everybody is really quick to point the finger at somebody else, right? So you have 2, 3 shitty boyfriends, and I guess men are just terrible. The whole gender is just bad. Rather than, all right, well, what are you doing that's contributing to this particular situation? Why do you seem to be the one who always attracts this terrible guy? Or why do you seem to be the person who always goes for these horrible women? Horrible women. Like, there is a common denominator when it comes to people's failed relationships, and it's you. And, I'm one of these people who I'm all about accountability. And I have to look at myself first before I can point fingers at anybody else. So what did I do wrong? What can I improve on? And that's something that people can have control over. You can control your behavior. You can control how you approach things, how you react to things. Previous relationships, I may have let her lead too many times. Now I lead most of the time. And we also have great communication where we understand that, and she says, you're the leader of the household, right? So it's something mutually understood between us, and she's perfectly fine with that. So, and there's a lot of communication between us, but I wouldn't have changed any of the bad relationships that I had to get to the point that I am today, is basically what I'm getting at. Um, and sometimes you gotta earn your stripes by fucking up. That's the best way of kind of putting it. Um, is there anybody who wants to add to the conversation? You can request to speak.
I just want to clarify that my 3 boyfriends that all cheated on me, none of that was my fault. No. I'm like, it was all them. No, it's so true though, because those were guys that I started dating because like they chose me or whatever, and I just was too much going with the flow instead of like, what do I really want? Like I was somebody who would just kind of like say yes to anybody, which is like saying it is like it sounds sad, but again, like, yeah, like, oh, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, so I guess I'll sleep with this guy. And then you do that for like 5 years and you're like, oh shit, I think I've been with one person I actually like.
Jesus. Yeah, I think well, that's another thing. I think people need to have strict boundaries when it comes to um, how they approach relationships and what they're willing to accept and not accept for men and women. So I think for a lot of guys, they don't really have as many boundaries as you would think, because I heard it said this way, and I think it makes sense. Guys look for a way to qualify a woman. Women look for a way to disqualify a man, right? So we're always looking to be like, yeah, she's kind of bitchy, but she does this, and she's good and bad. She's kind of nice. We're looking for ways to kind of turn those red flags into blue flags, and just completely ignore certain issues because she has these other things going on. Uh, where I think women generally find some way to kind of disqualify a guy because they generally have more options. Um, but I think both need to have a strict set of guidelines, what you will and will not accept, whether it be attributes from that person or whether it be how they treat you, what you expect from them. And not only that, not only have it in your mind, but you need to verbalize it with that person. Because uh, I think sometimes women think that we're mind readers and we're supposed to know what you will and will not like. And I think women need to tell a guy, especially if they're interested and they want some sort of relationship with them, I'm looking for this. And guys will respond to that because we're usually more direct. So if you tell us exactly what we want or what you want, then we'll respond to it. Um, Either we can do it or we can't, but there's nothing ambiguous when it comes to that. So I think having set boundaries as far as what you expect in a relationship and verbalizing it to a man, I think would really, really help. So if there are women who want to get married, all right, so how long in your relationship until you get proposed to? And then how long until you get married after you're proposed, right? And there are too many women who are like, well, let's see where this goes. right? And they're just laissez-faire about it. But I think by approaching it in that way, you're not taking your relationship seriously if your end goal is to get married. If your end goal is not to get married, you just want to be in a relationship and whatever. But I think the vast majority of women actually want to get married. And so I just see too many women who are very laissez-faire about their relationships. They stay in these lukewarm relationships for a long period of time. And then, unfortunately, some of them have children with these guys. And then a year after they have a kid, the guy bounces and they're stuck with a child and they're single mothers, right? So they didn't take family planning. They didn't take that relationship seriously. But put them in college, they'll take that degree seriously, right? So I think people really need to understand the importance of setting a guideline when it comes to a relationship, because that turns into family planning inevitably. So that's what I want to say.
But I will, yeah, I agree with you, Adam. I do see that as well. But I will throw in also a be careful, especially women, for that idea that, okay, I'm going to set boundaries. Now I'm going to fill in all the necessary checklist so that I can intellectually protect myself from rejection, intellectually protect myself from getting hurt and from being vulnerable, like Rocky was talking about. I'll pay. When in reality, my experience has been that a lot of this is energy. A lot of this is feeling a motherfucker out. You have to meet in person. I feel like that's part of the many reasons why online apps, whatever the hell, don't actually work. Is because so much of this is built on what's the vibe I get? What's this feeling I get? I was having a conversation with an ex one time, and she said she made this list, and it was the list of after, because she and I had long conversations, because I love dissecting all of this. And thank you very much, Adam, for inviting me on. But she made this list of 3 different, the scale of who she is attracted to. At the top of the list, there were 3. At the top of the list was men who are capable of murder, but treat me like a princess. In the center were guys who are assholes. And then on the bottom were guys who are super nice. And she put in quote parentheses, wet noodles. Okay. But that's on energy. That's on energy. Like we were talking about, at the beginning, when it comes to, well, I make more than this guy. Stedman, Oprah's beard or whatever, but Oprah's husband. There's no way Stedman is going to make more cash than Oprah. Never, never, never. But if you watch videos, Oprah's looking blinky-eyed and slow. She knows who's leading, because it's an energy thing. It's a vibe thing. It's a truth thing. The Stedman, I guarantee, is willing to take an L. He is willing, if he sets down a boundary, or if he sets down, this is what I want, he's willing for Oprah to walk out. And when a woman feels that she can't push you over, when a woman feels like, okay, there's some sort of structure here, there's safety in that structure. Not meanness, not abuse, but just, nope, this is what I want. This is what I actually, and it goes back to that list. And then there's a second part I want to make, a second point. I was having a conversation with a woman on my show a little bit ago. She was in her 20s and early 30s, and she's living in Los Angeles, and she's dating and she's having fun. She's been in a relationship, blah, 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 blah. And then she says she didn't really have an idea of having kids. And then she met this man, and they're going out and they're in a relationship. And the way she put it to me was, suddenly I felt like I wanted more of this man in the world. There's an energy, again, going back to our bellies, going back to the animal that we are. If we're honest with ourselves and we pay attention to that, there's not a checklist in the world that can fit that bill. So I'm not saying that Adam's wrong necessarily, but I'll just throw in, take your checklist with a grain of salt, because a lot of this has to do with energy and being honest with yourself.
Yeah, I think the bigger component, and I was like laughing at all the things you were saying, Peter, like the Stedman thing. I was like dying because I was like, you saying blinky eye just like made me laugh. The bigger thing under it is like,
that's from Patrice, but
oh, okay. Like self-worth is like the big thing that you need to have a good handle on before you can set up boundaries and have values, right? Because I think a lot of us are not clear with our communication in our relationship. Like, let's say you really throw down crystal fucking clear, here's what I really want. And just being able to throw that down takes confidence, because now it's like you are embracing a possible no. Like you're embracing, okay, as soon as you say what you want, now somebody cannot deliver. And it's almost like, well, if you stay in limbo, then you're not facing rejection because you're not making it clear, you know? And I know it's behind that is like a self-worth thing. You're like, well, I'll settle for like okay and like getting along, rather than like, damn, let me just like, what would be amazing to have? Here's what I want. I want to have kids. I want to get married. But it's like, ooh, once you put that out there, it's scary because you could be slapped down and then possibly like lose what you have. So, like, you know, even I'm in a long-term relationship, I still struggle with like self-worth. I still like have a dream about him cheating and I like wake up crying and like we have to like talk about it. But yeah, I think that's just something to always, I don't know. It's like, and I don't even have tips for that. Like, how do you work on your self-worth? I think so much of that is ingrained from your childhood and like from how your parents treated you. But that's a big component of like your success in relationships. Like, you can't be the guy who sets down boundaries and who leads a relationship if you don't have like the confidence in yourself. And as a woman, like, it's so easy to settle for less than you want if you're not like, I think about my sister who went 10 years without a date, and I would take her to like these Matthew Hussey talks. I'd take her, you know, he's kind of like a motivational speaker for like sad single women. I was like, I will take her here. This is going to be great. We're all going to get gassed up. And then the first guy who was nice to her in 10 years, who asked her out on a date, she said yes to. And now she married this guy, and he's a fucking degenerate gambler. And they moved out to Vegas. She quit her tenured teaching job on Long Island to move out to Vegas. And I'm like, shit, like she really needed that dick. But, you know, who am I to like say what's right or wrong to do? But I know that like if your self-worth is low, then you can't build on that.
Yeah, and there are guys who seek that out, right? They're usually not good guys, but there are guys who can tell an insecure woman, and they it's like cheating, right? They can cheat the game, right? Because they can get one over on her all the time. You know, for me personally, I'm pretty intuitive when it comes to people that I meet, and I'm looking at stuff that they're not realizing that I'm looking at. And I'm looking at how they respond to stuff and their mannerisms and all types of things. And for me, because I'm not a bad person, I don't like the insecure woman because I want a woman who's secure with herself. And an insecure woman, unfortunately, is really easy to control and manipulate and all these other things. And she includes a bunch of different problems. Some insecure women are violent. You never know what you're going to get. It's not fun to be with them. But there are guys who will take full advantage of it, like you said. So I think and also you said how can you have self-worth if you feel like it's ingrained? I'll tell you this. I did not have the self-worth that I do today that I did, 5 years ago. Just completely honest with you. I've had bouts of depression, thoughts of suicide, gone to therapy. My life was up and down. Been homeless, you name it. I've had a whole bunch of different things that was extremely challenging. And that's one of the reasons like I wrote my book, is because there was a guy who read my book, and he basically said, I don't know if you realize it, but you wrote a really good self-help book. And it's because, yeah, despite all these challenges, you're able to come out from it if you change your mindset, if you focus on the things that you do have versus the things that you don't have. If you look at a negative outcome as a life lesson, a learning experience, right? It's really just a shift in your perception. And that's how you can build your self-worth. And you can, let's say as a guy, if I'm dating and a woman's not interested, I'm like, just tell me you're not interested, I'll move on. And I'm good, right? Maybe that first day I'm like, that sucks. I just went on a couple of dates with her and spent some money. But after that, I'm good because I no longer am desperate. And guys who are insecure generally are kind of desperate. They're hoping and praying, and then let's say they get the girl and he's worried and he's like, whatever you want, baby, happy wife, happy life. and he doesn't have a level of self-respect, and he's insecure about where he stands within that relationship. And I've been that guy, and I think it is something that you can. It takes work, but I think you can be that insecure person and build yourself up to be someone who is completely secure and okay with whatever happens, whatever comes in your direction. You know, and one last thing, my son is 16, and you know, he talks to girls. Um, you know, he's a little bit naive about certain things, but he's 16, and I basically trained him to, you can talk to girls, but they're not your priority. Your priority is yourself. You have to build up yourself. Focus on yourself. You know, he wants to go to Japan after high school. And I'm like, all right, cool. And we've been talking about this for years. You know, he's a sophomore. And I'm like, don't let any little high school girl, you know, keep you from going to Japan. Like, this is your thing, right? So if some girl wants to talk to you, that's fine, but this is your thing. You need to build yourself up. And I think for men, if they build themselves up, the women will follow. And they will become the men that women will want, They'll become respectable men, men who are accomplished, and men who are secure. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents with it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, Adam. My experience is that same thing. So I've dealt with, yeah, I got sober when I was 19, or I'm sorry, when I was 15. So I'm 19 years sober. I have experience with thoughts of suicide. Absolutely. I've slept in my car before. I've had a long, long and up and down life. But the older I get, the more I work on myself, and the more I work on myself. And it is hard work. But confidence is not something that is born into us. And I really want to help men understand that. It's not you either got it or you don't. That's complete and utter bullshit. And in fact, most of the men who quote unquote got it are really acting from a place of fake. They are insecure, because I've been that guy too. I'm insecure, and so I'm going to be I'm going to act like I'm a pimp and a scholar at the same time. I'm going to be pimp scholar shit, and I'm just going to walk around like I know everything, and I'm telling everybody how to whatever, because underneath that is, I am terrified of rejection. I'm terrified of not enough. No woman, just like we always say, no man can fix it. Well, guess what? No woman can fix that. No relationship, no money, no nothing, because that is a bottomless pit unless you work on yourself. And this is universal. Unless you work on yourself, then that's not going to fix. Here's the way, some of the ways I work on myself, and I work on that confidence. It's corny, stupid shit, but it works. I meditate every morning. And I meditate wrong, I meditate short, I meditate right, I meditate long, I think the whole time, and sometimes I'm completely empty and floating. Regardless, I meditate every day, I pray, I say stupid, corny shit like affirmations. I don't care. I try a bunch of stuff out and see what speaks to my soul, because again, this is an inside job. And when I'm working on myself, regardless of what happens on the outside, I can handle it a little better. You know, I can handle a little better. I can handle myself. I can handle my weird squirrel brain. And also, you know, it sounds trite, but also working on myself usually also looks like going back to the honesty thing. So, you know, as an example, one of the reasons why I started my show is because I wanted to have a place to say foul shit and rant, but also because I wanted a place to be more authentically myself, to express myself in ways that I hadn't before, and to provide myself, not everybody else with, look at me, I can entertain you, but to provide myself with a platform. And I swear to God, something as dumb and weird as you might think, but starting a podcast, the podcast has actually made me more myself than I ever have been, because it's a place where I get to express myself freely. It's a place that is 100% autonomy, 100% freedom. It's me, and sometimes it's political, and sometimes it's music, and sometimes it's comedy, and sometimes it's this, it's that, it's whatever, but it's myself. So whatever that thing is in you, whether it's man or woman or trans or whatever the fuck, whatever is speaking to you as far as your purpose, if you walk towards and work on your purpose, you will feel more solid. And I'll just throw this last thing in. I think, because one of the things that some of the women, even on this talk, have talked about the shitty behavior of men, is cheating, as an example. Well, like I said earlier, cheating usually comes from I'm a scarcity thing. Like Adam, a scarcity is underneath that is insecurity. So if men work on themselves, women are happier. Interesting how that works out. when men are more secure, women are happier. Yeah, so I'll just throw it out there.
All right. Actually,
Um,
I actually wanted to bring in someone who wants to speak real quick. Mr. Camino. Camino, I just added you. Can you speak? Can you speak? While he's getting, I guess it's going through. Rocky, you were going to say something. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
yeah, just on the topic of self-worth and self-confidence, security, I think that a lot of that is framed on, what society puts value on. And I think that a lot of times, especially for men, some of those, because it's obviously easier for women to get sex, right? We talked about that before. So I think for men, it's a lot of times things that they have no control over, or things that don't happen in the short terms, such as their finances, or their career status, their height. There's a lot of physical things that women look for in men that they have literally no control over. Um, I've met the most gorgeous guys that are empty, hollow vessels. They have nothing more to offer than that. And I've met guys that I'm not the least bit physically attracted to that get my engine going because they are full of knowledge. They are full of um, compassion. So I think that, what the world places value on, I think that a lot of people have things that they're worthy of. I think that it's not something that you're going to see right off the bat. And I think that very few times people they fail to take the time to actually get to know somebody. Like, have my whole life not really had a hard time getting people physically attracted to me, and I've contemplated a lot, like, why don't I just let myself go, because I feel like people really aren't seeing the things that I most love about myself. Chrissy's laughing because she knows it's true, because I'm like, being in education for 18 years, I've had, the cliche comments, oh, the hot teacher. And to me, it's like disgusting, because I was a badass educator. My kids loved me. I was a math educator. My kids learned a shit ton from me. I was the funny teacher. I was the pretty teacher. I was the cool teacher. I was the super smart teacher that everybody wanted, because they not only knew they were going to get good grades, but they were also going to actually learn something. And so when guys led with that foot of like, oh, you're the hot teacher, can I come to your class? I was like, I would just cut them off right away, because like I actually am proud of myself. I want someone to see that it was a thankless career that, I dedicated my life to, definitely not for the money. Um, Little things like compassion, when I saw my grandfather, on his deathbed, and I saw him surrounded by his children. It was like kind of selfishly one of the things that I was like, damn, I really have to have kids. Like, I don't want to leave. I don't want to be on my deathbed alone. Like, I don't want to not leave a legacy behind. And it was so selfish at the time, because I'm like, kids are hard. But it made me think of like, I want someone to see my compassion, someone to see my work ethic, and I think that those are things that a lot of people have. A lot of people have a lot of things to be really proud of. And I just don't think that they put that out there, number one. And I don't think that people receive it because they just don't take the time to.
Yeah, and that's even more of a reason why apps don't work. Because like you said, you met guys who weren't necessarily the most attractive guys, but they got you going. Where using mobile apps, it accentuates the importance of appearance, and even more so how you take pictures, which most guys are terrible at taking pictures. So it really is a disadvantage for a lot of guys, to try and use mobile apps to put themselves out there, um, and to sum up their character as a human being into a paragraph as to what they offer, and which is why like everybody's profile sounds cliche, because how do you sum up who you are within that paragraph? Although I will say this, that someone's profile can definitely be a red flag. Um, so like from a guy's perspective, uh, I will say any woman who has an attitude in her profile is someone I do not want to talk to. Um, I don't want no boys. I am here to play no games. If we go out, you better like they got demands and they're just like angry and writing in caps. I was like, red flag. She is jaded. Never talk to this woman ever. So sometimes the profile can tell you a little bit about somebody. But in general, yeah, it's hard to use an app to kind of summarize who someone is, and have someone, let's say for example, have a woman go past the superficial to see what a guy has to offer, or vice versa, have a guy look past how she looks to find out what she has to offer, character wise. Just like you said, you met guys who were amazing looking and they were complete idiots and they had nothing to offer. As a guy, sometimes you run into that too with women, where you're like, so what do you like to do? I don't know. It's like, what do you do? Do you just stare at the wall all day? Um, like, it's just, that could be equally frustrating from a guy's perspective. Men do want, let me rephrase that. Men who want relationships want a woman with some substance, right? She doesn't have to be Einstein, but it would help if she's not a complete idiot or she has some sort of interest, some sort of hobby, something. Because I've also found that a woman who doesn't have any interest or hobbies, that guy becomes her interest and hobby. So when you try to leave, she's going to be pissed off because her interest and hobby is walking out the door. Um, so, Chrissy, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think whenever you see a woman that is like really upfront and like sass and like with the standards and I mean, I know I just talked all this time about how I have low standards, but I think that women who are like, oh, you need to pay and I am not taking any scrubs, it's like that's a cope. It's like a pre-rejection almost. It's like if it didn't work out, it's like, oh well, because he couldn't meet my very high standards instead of like that's just a buffer so you don't have to like look within. And men and women do that differently, but it's just like no matter how much rejection you go through, like keep yourself vulnerable and don't, and I guess not to let yourself get hardened by life, because then that fucking asshole wins, or that bitch who cheated on you wins. And that's a hard thing too, is not to take your beef or your problems from your last relationship into your new relationship, which is like so much easier said than done. But again, that comes down to communication. Like, hey, like this is what I'm sensitive on from my last relationship. Like, or hey, like who is this person texting you? Like I got cheated on in the past, so I just want to make, because if you don't and you let that stuff fester and get to you, then you'll snap, and then that person will be like, you're crazy, and it's like, oh, it's just because you didn't address this stuff and you let it build up.
Yeah, exactly. That's why communication is extremely important. Um, Jenny, do you wanna speak? You wanna request? It's funny because Jenny and I will have phone conversations. She's like, oh, I got so much to say, and now she's not even putting her hand up to speak. So, um, Divergent, do you have anything to say from Deutschland? What's dating like in Germany? I'm gonna invite you and see if you take it.
I'm gonna guess that Germans are very kinky. Like that's what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning a lot of ropes, a lot of yelling.
Hey, the water's warm, okay? This is a big hoop.
She's not taking the invite. It's okay. Um,
Chrissy, I wanted to add that what you said about, they always say we teach people how to treat us. And that
Yeah.
those few, like 4 or 5 first dates that you're like, hey, this is how every way I've been hurt, please don't do it. And it's like, it's like that for a while until you learn that, yeah, they're either going to think I'm crazy, or it just, you learn that it's like not everybody is privy to that information, at least that soon. But it becomes a habit after a while.
Yeah, I spent my whole first date with my current boyfriend. Like, I did everything wrong. I spent the whole first date talking about my ex. Like, it was.
And he
I
still hears. That's
I must
success.
have. It must be all these Kegels I'm doing. I can't think of any other reason. But yeah, I just did like everything wrong, and he wasn't like, "Wow, you're mentally ill." No, but he's got stuff too. Like it's not. I'm sure it's not easy to like. A lot of women like don't want to. I never thought I would be dating somebody with a kid. If you had asked me like 10, 15 years ago, I would be like, "Ew, no." But like the older you get, it's like it would be insane. It's like you have to be okay with dating somebody who has a kid.
Yeah, and as far as it goes back to that energy thing, I think that exactly like what everybody's talking about. Most of the women, because I like white girls, most of the women that I've lived in the Bay Area and in Manhattan. So what kind of white girl am I going to get? I'm going to get liberal white girls. Hello. And so on paper, on Tinder, on wherever it is, I would never date a guy who blah, 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 blah. But when, regardless, what kind of political, here's my checklist, before all that comes in, they feel my energy, they feel my, and then for some reason, they're like, even though on paper, if you had asked me a year ago, would I ever date a guy who voted for Trump? I would have said no. Suddenly I'm finding myself in love with this guy, or I'm finding myself wanting to be with this guy. And maybe we can separate that, or I become like like a short circuit in their mind, and it overrides the energy, the love, the openness, whatever it is, the communication, the dick. It opens up, it opens up the fucking checklist. It opens up the checklist, which also, again, goes back to the being willing to take an L thing.
Oh yeah, I was the same way. I was like, I would never date somebody who voted for Trump because I didn't vote for him the first time. But it's like not only was I okay, actually, I mean, like my current boyfriend's libertarian, so I mean, like I was all over the place. I think I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. I don't know what the fuck I was doing, but like together, just through communication, like he helped me break apart my like feminist sort of brainwashing and my like liberal like mentality, and just think really like and that's the thing is like the best couple, you teach each other things, like you educate each other, and just he helped me open up my mind, and like thank God, because I would have been still like living in Brooklyn with my Craigslist roommate and like would be currently owning a cat tree, I think, at this point. So it's always it's good. Like it's good to date that person that you don't think on paper you'd be into. Because again, it's exactly what Peter said. It's an energy thing. You're like, what? That dick is so good. I don't even care who you voted for. And you should be able to like challenge each other. Like, why did you vote for this person? Why do you feel this way? Is this really how you feel? Or is this how you were raised? Or is this like your friends? Or is this like, you know, your university kind of training?
Right. Jenny she wants to come in here. One second.
Oop, am
Hi,
I on
Jenny.
here?
Yes,
Can
you
y'all
are.
hear me?
Yep.
Hey guys, sorry I was getting coffee, but I just wanted to say thank you guys for all that y'all have been saying. I mean, it's so funny. First of all, Chrissy, you're hilarious. So thanks for being hilarious. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how values are important as well. I think that energy is something that, is cool. You want to have a cool vibe with someone, but I think that a lot of people these days aren't focusing enough on values. And I think we maybe need to focus on that a little bit more too.
What kind of, when you say values, can you give us an example? Like, I think I have an idea, but if you want to just add an example.
Well, I mean, y'all are talking about how, you would maybe never date somebody who voted for Trump or something. I don't think politics are as important as values, but I think that, they can overlap for sure. And I think just being on the same page in terms of principles and in terms of how you want to raise a family, It's just important to not get to that, 50% divorce rate.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you guys bring this up. Not many people know this, but like when I first got with my now wife, I was kind of red pilling myself. I was liberal, Democrat, and over a period of time, I got exposed to more information, more things that made more sense to me, and I was slowly moving away from the left. And I started just listening to other content. I wasn't holding a hard line. I'm pretty independent even today. Um, but I was slowly moving away from the Democrat Party, and I think when I met her, I was done. I'm pretty sure I was like done with the Democrats, and I was just consuming either center media, independent media, right-leaning media. I was listening to anything that basically wasn't mainstream media. I was even listening to progressives. I was just consuming all different types of media to figure out what made the most sense to me. And I remember we had just gotten together, and she was, I think she was taking the train to work or something like that. And I said, "Can I send you a video?" She's like, "Yeah." And I sent her a video of Larry Elder. And she tells me later on, uh, she was like, when you sent me that and I started watching it, she was like, "Oh no, but I really like this guy." And but I never like forced it on her, right? I never said you must this, you must that. I just asked her, and I said, "You want to talk about it?" And then slowly we just started like having conversations about stuff. I was learning things, she was learning things, and it basically got to a point where we kind of agreed on a bunch of different things, and we basically red pilled each other, to the point where this last election she voted for Trump, and she never would have thought she would have come to that point, um, to want to do that. Um, so it was definitely interesting because she trusted me and she also had good faith in me, and she knew my character. She was willing to hear me out, or at least like to entertain what I'm showing her, and then we can talk about it. If she never came over, I would have been perfectly fine with that. I can agree to disagree with anybody, right? But the fact that she was willing to listen to me, she didn't, try to like end our relationship because of politics or anything like that. Um, you know, and like you said, someone may have like a checklist, but if they're feeling that person, they might, cross out some lines that they normally would. So I think that was the situation with her. I was able to get her to open up.
This is really a podcast about the power of good dick.
That's what I'm fucking saying. That's what I'm goddamn saying.
Can we retitle this?
That's what I was gonna say, because I think if liberal girls stuck only to values, they'd be stuck with liberal dick. That's no fun. Liberal dick
which
is no
is
fun.
the worst.
Wah, wah.
It's like a limp handshake.
Yeah, but why do you also think that they're all in like polyamorous relationships?
Oh my God, can we please talk about
Yes.
that?
Oh God, I used to think that I wanted that because I was like, oh, this is cool and modern, and I've been in threesomes, and I'm fun. I'm fun when I have 4 drinks. I'm bisexual after 3.5 drinks, sure. And then the older you
People
get,
can
you're
get
like,
themselves
oh,
that
this is
they won't be sad if they're cheated on as long as they know about
yeah.
it.
And you do get sad though. It's like I've never been in one of those, but one of my, okay, the ex-boyfriend, the most recent ex-boyfriend, it was like the first threesome or whatever. And I wanted to like impress him, and I like girls. I'm like, sure, why not? And I just had no boundaries. I just was like, anything goes because I desperately want your validation and I want to stay in this relationship. And he picked out this girl that he had hooked up with years ago. So like it wasn't like oh let's get on Thrinder together and pick one out together. Like no, he picked this girl already. This was like somebody he already like banged years ago, and I had no idea like what to do. And I just like brought condoms because I thought, oh, this is like it's a picnic. Just bring things, you know what I mean? And like I didn't explain what I wanted or didn't want to have happen, but this ex-boyfriend took the fact that I brought condoms to mean like, go ahead, bang her, let me watch, which is like what happened. And I was like almost in tears, like watching this go down. It's like, well, you brought the condoms, and it just was such a mess. And I was just like a dumb 26-year-old. And it's like, later on I had other experiences which were like better and more fun, still complicated, but like, it's just like you're sold this thing, like it's like this cool, modern, better than monogamy thing, and it's like a trick, man, because it's like for me it's like when you're in a monogamous relationship, it's like there's no hiding. It's like, hey, you're weird, what's going on? Like, no, we're gonna talk until this comes out of you. Oh, no, it's not nothing, stop saying it's nothing. And when you're just sort of like banging around, I feel like it's easier for you to hide, and there's something really cool about someone who's like just dedicated to your success as a person, and then you don't feel like as much of a piece of meat. I don't know. And I have so many friends who are like porn stars and they're all about that life. And I guess I would get too jealous. It wouldn't be for me, but I just feel like as someone who has hidden in relationships, like, oh yeah, that would be an easy place to hide out in for a while.
You mentioned the word modern, and it's such an interesting thing. The way we approach relationships is, and we view it like, oh, this is the modern way of doing it, as if modern means that it's good, right? I personally think that we are disrespectful on traditions. Um, People today, we kind of look down at people of the past, even like a recent past. It's like, oh, how could they have done that? Oh, these people are so backwards. Why would they have lived this way? Like, and I feel like we don't think that people of the past had some sort of valuable knowledge. I think there are things that human beings have done for thousands of years, not by accident. I think they did it for a particular reason. And what we're seeing happen basically since the sexual revolution is something that is far different than what has ever been done before, right? Where women have carte blanche to do whatever they want, complete sexual freedom. And not only that, they have contraceptions to make sure they don't get pregnant. So you have all these things. This is the modern way of going about it. And I think partly for myself, maybe it's getting older and just like re-examining things. And even for me, being the modern man, where I'm saying, it's okay, I'm here to support you. What do you want, honey? And kind of taking the back seat. What I'm finding is that maybe the modern way isn't always the best way. Maybe the modern way for women to just do whatever they want and just say, if it happens, it happens. Oh, he's cute, I'll do him, whatever. And just having no expectations. And on top of that, having no shame associated with it. So like when I talk about single parent homes, because I grew up in it, and now it's like, it's celebrated. We call them strong, independent women, and look at the strong single mother. And we don't shame certain behaviors. I remember we used to shame like teenage pregnancies, and now it's just kind of like it's okay. We're here to support you.
Well, now they have TV shows.
Right, now they have TV shows, and you have all these different things. This is the modern way, and what it feels like to me is that the modern way is without shame. It's without boundaries. Those are like
and not everything that's progressive is progress.
Right, exactly. Not everything progressive is progress. And what I'm finding is that a life with boundaries and with limitations is actually a more fulfilling life, a life with planning and goals, structure. All these things that for thousands of years people generally practice. We moved about in a very particular way for very particular reasons. And I think we throw away what people have done for thousands of years just to say that we're hip and chic and we're going to do it a different way, because those are Those are old-timey people without cell phones. We're new age people with, fast cars and cell phones, and we can fly to the other side of the world in a matter of hours. Um, so I think that we have a level of egotism in today's, not just with dating, but I think overall, we're easy to discard traditions and things that people did in the past. And maybe there were some things that are generally maybe barbaric, but it doesn't mean that everything that people did in the past was without reason. And that includes relationships. I think the way that men and women moved about was done in a very particular way.
Yeah, I highly doubt like an old person on their deathbed is gonna be like, any moment now, my old thruple's gonna come through the door to see me off. You know, like I feel like that's great when you're like younger and still looking good, but I don't know. Maybe I've yet to meet like some old ass like foursome, like oh yeah, we do everything together. You know, we even throw out our backs together. I have no idea, but I just feel like that's sad. And I can't speak for like all women, but I know that like hookup culture and birth control, all that stuff, it's like it's supposed to make your life easier and like less complicated. All it's done for me is like allowed me to waste years of my life. Like, you know, when the stakes are high, when you could get pregnant, when, you know, and I know our lifespans are longer now, but like just for me looking back, I go, oh, I wasted years because I could, because I was on birth control, because hookup culture was the norm and it was supported. It's like, man, I didn't even like those dudes, you know? Things should matter. Then you should be choosier about who you share your time and your body with. You know, it shouldn't be like all willy nilly. All right, now I sound old as fuck.
Yeah, definitely. I'm wondering if the quadruple lemon party would be anything people want. Um, I want to maybe adjust the idea of like, okay, shame as far as, and I know I get what you're saying, Adam. I don't think shame is ever a good thing. So maybe the idea of consequence instead of shame. And I think this goes down to, again, the honesty, right? So the nature that we are, the animal that I am wants what I want, and it's okay to go for that. The cultural, the societal, whatever restrictions on that were placed exactly like you're talking about, Adam. We're not arbitrarily placed there. It was placed there because, oh, you know what? We tried this, we tried that. Turns out hitting a woman on the head and grabbing her, dragging her into a cave. It might be hot for a second, but it's not it's not a sustainable way to manage relationships between men and women. But I want to touch on the idea of the modern thing because I think it goes to having uncomfortable conversations. So I think my parents were willing to have uncomfortable conversations with me. There were when I'm in a good relationship, it's because I'm willing to have an uncomfortable conversation. I'm willing to take the L. I'm willing to set up boundaries. I'm willing to set up structure. I was talking with an ex-girlfriend a couple months ago, and she was talking about how an ex of hers asked her to dinner. And so they go out to dinner, and she knows, he's not going to make a move. It's not the type of dinner. It's just a, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah type of dinner. They go out to dinner in San Francisco. They finish dinner, and he's like, hey, want to go walk through the park? Want to go for a walk? And she was like, no, I don't really, no. And she told me it wasn't because she didn't felt like he was going to make a move or whatever. She said the subconscious feeling was she wasn't safe with him. Like if they're walking in the park, it was getting dusk. She would feel like she'd have to be more aware of the energy around her. She told me that when she walks with me, she gets to be a bubbly little self and like gets to play, gets to joke around, and she knows that I'm aware of the energy around me and can protect. The structure is already set up there, right? And I also want to point out the OnlyFans thing, because Chrissy, you've had a lot of porn stars on your show. I've dated strippers before. Like, there's a certain type of person who can handle what that life has. And shame isn't the right word as far as getting somebody away from that, but I think consequence is. There are certain women who I've met who think that they can handle the consequence of the rejection, of the cheapness, of that dirty feeling, of that whatever, who think that they can handle the foursome, like you're saying, or the polyamory, the non-monogamy, whatever, and try it out. And okay, but you need to be aware, you need to have an uncomfortable conversation, and maybe culturally we need to do with these young girls, that these are the consequences that may happen if you are not that type of person. You know what I mean? These are the consequences. This is the feeling you may have, and this is not to shame you out of it necessarily, because again, I'm not. I know it sounds, it's overused, but I don't want to like, kink shame somebody if it's legit ass motherfucking kink. But most women are not built for doing that. And even in non-monogamy, as an example, in my life, I've had times where I thought that that's what I wanted, and I lived that way. And then there were times I had to adjust it, but it was hard to let go of the label of I'm Mr. Non-monogamy guy, because I had pride in it and I had protection in it, and I could protect myself from being vulnerable to the women I'm with because I'm fucking all these other girls, and it's fine. But I had to sit down with my own self and realize there are consequences, give and take, whatever. So I think it goes back to having uncomfortable conversations too.
Yeah, I agree with you. Basically everything you said. Someone had requested Little Bundle. I'll send you an invite if you want to jump in. Hi.
I guess I just wanted to say too that I think the cheapness of sex made me feel cheap, I think. And to me, that's something that isn't really talked about. Like, people don't really talk about the emotional element of sex anymore. I mean, there's so many hormones and oxytocin and all norepinephrine and serotonin and dopamine and all of these things going on. And it seems it makes sense when you think about it from a neurological standpoint too, that yeah, having casual sex can hurt your feelings because you might get attached to that person. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, I appreciate that. That's actually a good point, because there's something that people refer to as pair bonding. And one thing I've noticed, especially for women who do have a lot of partners, they have a hard time basically finding. Let's say they make it into their 30s, and they still haven't had like a successful relationship, and they've slept with multiple people. Their likeliness of bonding with that one person and saying this is it becomes more difficult, because they've spent that emotional energy on other people, right? And it's kind of like you lose a little bit of yourself with each person that you sleep with. So yeah, that pair bonding aspect becomes very, very difficult. You know, not to put my wife's business out there, but she had very little amount of partners. So for her to bond with me was actually pretty easy. And I noticed that it's different for her than previous women that I've been with. They weren't, whores or anything like that, but they had a number of previous boyfriends, and it was maybe a little bit more difficult for them to kind of like say, this is it. So I just wanted to throw that part out there. We got someone who wants to jump in. 1 second. Kunti, you can go ahead and, yep, there you go.
Yeah, hi guys. So I had a question for Chrissy. I want to say, first of all, big fan.
Oh no. Okay, here we go.
Big fan. So just if you have any advice on this for a young comic starting out, do you have any like advice on maintaining a healthy relationship when you're doing late mics all the time, and if I ever go on tour?
Yeah, that's the thing, is like when it's easier and it's also harder. It sounds like you're dating a civilian, or like not somebody who's also doing comedy.
Yeah, no, she just she likes to stay at home, and we live on a farm, so
What?
pretty much. Yeah.
How are you going to open mics on a farm?
Right now I drive 2 hours to Memphis. I live in Arkansas.
Wow.
And we're moving to Austin in the next like 6 months. So
I'm gonna be in Little Rock on the 13th.
yeah, no, I'm gonna try to make it. I just saw that.
Yeah. Just plugging myself out here while you're asking questions. Okay, you're only gonna know like the longer you're in this relationship, like you'll have to, right, you might burn out and get, be over comedy and it'll be a non-issue, or it's like if the bug's really bitten you, you're like, nope, I have AIDS now, like I'm gonna be in comedy the rest of my life, like I can't help it, this is a commitment. And she's either gonna like grow to, like, how long have you been with her so far?
We've been together for 2.5 years. We got engaged a few months ago.
And so how long have you been doing comedy for?
About a year.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, that's a decent amount of time. Um, yeah, you won't know till you go through it together. I would say just like make sure, like always good advice for comics is like, hang on to your day job for as long as you can. Like make sure you're working those other streams of income, like figure out how you can make money and still pursue your dreams. Cause it's like, a woman is going to feel tentative about a stand-up comic if that's all you're doing. Like especially if if she's not looking to take the like financial lead in the relationship, is just like make sure you are like taking care of yourself financially, you have your plan, and and that's how you'll know if this person is like, well, you're engaged, so it sounds like it's already good. Is just get organized, figure out like where your mics are, and also like take full advantage of, like, I wish I had TikTok and Instagram and all this stuff when I first started doing comedy. Like put your, if you do good impressions, get those up on social media. If you do funny characters, get that out there. If you just have like a couple bits that you want to run, or if you're good at editing, like get that out there. Like take full advantage of all these different platforms that you have.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, sorry, that's bad advice. The advice is always like just do it, and like if your love for comedy will take you through it, and you'll either get more into it and keep going, or you'll be like, this isn't as fun for me as it was anymore, and you'll find something else.
Yeah, I mean, she's known from like the beginning. The reason I like wasn't doing stand up when we first met is because we were in the middle of Montana and like there's no mics. So
Oh wow.
But yeah, she's pretty understanding. I'm an Uber driver, so like I have a flexible schedule with the bikes
Good.
and everything.
Okay, good. Yeah, I've always had like at least one day job, so it's like, and that's what people don't talk about. Like then there's comics who will like shame you and be like, "Oh, you're not a real comic till you don't have a day job anymore." It's like, all right, well, most of us live in the real world, so you just like, yeah, do what you gotta do. You like try everything, not just stand up, but podcasting, characters, improv, like cast a wide net.
Awesome, I appreciate it.
Aw, thanks.
All right, thank you. So we're nearing the end. I want to go to each person on the panel. Any final words that you want to add? So we can go to Rocky.
Good convo. Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed sharing, and Chrissy and Peter, you guys are awesome. It was just great to hear just a little encouragement for myself personally. Thanks for hosting, Adam.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. Jenny, do you want to say something? I know I still have you up here.
Oh, I just want to say thanks for coming on, everybody. It was a great discussion, and I think it's a really important discussion to have. Everybody, I think especially with the pandemic, has been thinking a lot more deeply about what love actually means, what it is, how to find it. So this was a really insightful discussion, and thank you to all of you.
All right, thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I just want to say you guys are right. I was really impressive, and I'm grateful to myself for. Thank you very much, Adam, and to everybody for allowing us to have this conversation. I think just as far as a message, just to leave with you guys, work on yourself. I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. I don't fucking want to do it either. But if you do it, there's never going to be a thing where like, oh, I worked on myself too much. No, like, I mean, self-care, motherfucker. Like other people use it poorly or cheaply, but take care of yourself. And the more you do that and walk forward with your version of a higher power, whatever the fuck, universe, self, whatever, nothing bad can come from that. And again, thank you very much, Chrissy. Thank you so much, Rocky. And thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Peter. Chrissy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on this. This was fun. Everybody like brought so much value to this, and like especially hearing from like Rocky, it's like you feel like you're not alone in your circumstance. It's like, oh no, it's like I'm not just a dumb whore. It's like it's the culture, or at least it's half and half. But yeah, and of course it's like, you get older, you figure it all out. And then before you know it, you're fat and ugly. No, I got to end on a high note. Okay, here we go. Yeah, you got to just spend a lot of time knowing yourself. Like, get away from the screens, get away from the bullshit. Like, if you're too wrapped up in social media and you're like, I'm getting angry and sad a lot. Like, yes, meditating is whatever you need to do to find yourself and center yourself, be it baths or exercise or meditation or free writing, writing things you're grateful for every day. Like, all that stuff works wonders, like the telling yourself positive things every day, reading stuff that's uplifting and constantly be learning. So yeah, just keeping your energy good, and like really everything will follow, and it's never too late to like turn it around and fix yourself, I guess. I don't know, I sound retarded, but this was great. I really enjoyed it. I love you all, you guys.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming on, Chrissy. And I guess I'll have the final word. So I think one of the things I didn't bring up is the value of being a respectable person. I think, well, speaking from a male perspective, women generally want a man who is respectable. We want to be someone that women can depend on, who live their life in a principled fashion. This is probably the most ideal man that they can have. So, if you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you mess up, be willing to admit that you messed up. That's what a respectable human being does. Um, and women want a man who's respectable, someone they can look up to, and someone that can help to accentuate their life. And I think there's a level of value of just being a respectable person that I don't think that we really talk about. We talk about what someone can provide, how good they are in bed, how good looking they are, how much money that they have, what they can do for them, where they can go. But we don't talk about things that you can't buy, and you can't buy respect. You can't buy respectability. These are personal qualities that you have to develop over a period of time. And I think for women, look for men who stick to their word. Look for men who are respectable, someone you can feel safe around. These are incredibly important things if you're talking about having a successful long-term relationship. And I think for men, look for a woman who's respectable, a woman who respects her body, a woman who respects herself to not flaunt herself, to not put herself everywhere for everybody to consume. There is value in a level of chastity for a woman. And I think we like to pretend that there isn't, that women can just do whatever they want. And generally speaking, sure, but will it produce the outcome that you want? And I've talked to women personally who put their bodies out there and they attracted non-respectable men. And when they covered up and they respected themselves, they respected their bodies, and they looked beautiful in that particular manner, not sexy, right? And those are two different things. Then they attracted respectable men, right? So they're having a level of respect from both ends is something that's extremely valuable. And I think that we should really embrace that. So I know my viewpoint is a little bit of a traditional viewpoint, but just as someone who talks to a variety of different people, men and women, I think it's something that is missing within a particular conversation. Character matters when it comes to relationships and dating, and especially having a successful long-term relationship. So find someone who's strong in character and you have a better chance of having a successful relationship. So I'll end on that. Thank you everybody for coming in. Next week we'll be doing the same. Twitter Spaces. We'll be talking about the role of government, so something completely different than love. But I want to talk about a variety of different topics. We'll have different guests. So come in next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. And thank you all for listening to us speak. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Adam.